Hi, I'm Tamsin, and welcome to this week's video bonus for the English Sound Building podcast episode number 10, in which we recap the sounds we've looked at in the first season and look at a number of different techniques to vary your practice for the listen and repeat exercises in those podcasts. So as I said in the episode, in the next few video bonuses, we're going to review some of the tongue twisters we've looked at so far, either in the podcast episodes, here in the video bonus episodes, and I'll also be bringing in some of the ones which I've used on Instagram every week as well. And instead of just reviewing those tongue twisters, looking at the original sound that I introduced them for, we'll speak about all of the sounds we've practiced in those tongue twisters, and we'll also talk about some of the different techniques that we talked about in episode 10 for practicing them. So let's see how we get on. So the tongue twister I've chosen to review today is one which I posted to Instagram after the th and v episode, and it is the freely threaded beads rather thrilled them. And the techniques I'll talk about today, and again, I've just chosen a random range of techniques which we spoke about in this episode. I'll try to choose a different variety every week. First of all, we'll just talk about reading it really fast or really slow. So again, with a tongue twister, it's better if you can read it more than once to really challenge your muscles. Today, just so that this video doesn't become too long, I'll just read each time once over. But if you want to try to repeat it 2 or 3 times, that's fantastic. So if we think about really slowing it down, we could get to the freely threaded beads rather thrilled them. And that's making me really think about my mouth position for each sound. Equally, I can try and do it really quickly. The freely threaded beads rather thrilled them. That one's challenging my muscles more. I have to really be able to move everything around quickly in my mouth to get that one sounding good. We could also think about doing it silently, which was one thing I explained on the podcast, but obviously couldn't demonstrate on the podcast. So I'm going to do it without voicing my voice at all, even though of course some of those sounds are voiced sounds. But again, just really thinking about what I'm doing with my mouth instead. Or I could also use this one to practice some consonant sounds. So it was introduced to practice the th and v voiceless and voiced pair, and it's a fantastic one to practice this because it actually alternates between the voiced th and the voiceless th. So just focusing on those sounds, we could read th, th, th. And again, we could move to doing that more quickly. Th, th, th. There are other consonant sounds in there which are useful to practice as well. So there are quite a few d sounds in there, as well as one of the z sounds which we looked at. And with those d sounds as well, there are 2 of the 3 ed ending patterns that we looked at. So we have both a id pronunciation and a d pronunciation in there. So I could try to link all of those consonant sounds together. It's actually really tricky to do that without doing all the consonant sounds, but without just also focusing on 1 or 2 single consonant sounds. But we'll see how it sounds anyway. We'll see how it happens. This is all about playing with sound. So I'm going to try to read those consonant sounds that we have looked at, but I won't be reading the vowel sounds or the consonant sounds that we haven't looked at yet either. And it will give me something like this. V, d, id, z, v, d, v. Tricky, but still a really nice way to isolate some of those sounds we've looked at and practice them individually again, but in longer strings of sounds. And then if we come back to the full tongue twister, you might find that you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective. The freely threaded beads rather thrilled them. I definitely find it easier to say once I've broken it down into some of its component sounds. Let me know if you do too. So that's the end of this week's short bonus episode. As I said, we'll be doing this over the next few weeks with some of the tongue twisters which have come up so far, to review those sounds and to talk a little bit more, or to show you a little bit more how I would use some of those techniques that we talked about in episode 10. Enjoy sound building, and I'll see you again soon.